Hello and welcome. This is RULIS training, the Row Utility and Leasing Information System. And specifically in this training, we're going to be focusing on how to create and submit a utility permit application. So this course, this instructor-led training, it is a recording. So the idea is that if you're not able to attend a live session, we just wanted to make sure that this was available for you. Bear in mind we are recording this a little ways ahead of the go live, so there might be some minor changes to field name or replacement or selection, etc. But those things will likely be minor if they happen at all, and we will have some other materials available that you can always refer to, and we'll be updating those on an ongoing basis. My name is Will Boyd. I'll be your instructor here. And let's go ahead and get started. The objectives for this course are primarily for those who are a utility permit owner or a utility permit consultant, a utility consultant, to be able to create a new utility permit application, navigate that lease application using what we'll call the outline tree. We'll see what that looks like here in a moment. We're going to define the project boundary, draw the design location, and complete several of the application forms, contact information, and timeframes. And then finally, we want you to be able to submit that application for TxDOT to review. Along the way, after you've submitted it, you can check the status of a submitted application, you can respond to requests for additional information and modifications, and you can manage tasks for approved permits, things like schedule changes or amendments. So like I said, this is primarily intended for our permit owners and consultants. However, we know there are a number of different TxDOT folks who may want to look at this just to make sure they understand how this process works for their partners out there in the utility companies. And so we'll make sure that we provide that for you as well. Let's go ahead and dive into RULIS. Most of our time today is going to be focused on the application itself, on the system. In RULIS. This is the home page of the RULIS Utility Permits module. There are going to be some other modules of RULIS that may look a little different. We're focused just today on the utility permits piece. So let's talk about what we see here across the top of the page. There's a number of different menus or actions you can perform. There's a few tools over here in the top right corner. Also, most of these menus that you see here at the top are duplicated in the buttons that you see below. Apply for a permit, draft applications, actions required, and submitted applications. At any time in RULIS, whenever you are navigating around, you're on other pages, you can get back to this home page by clicking the TxDOT icon in the top left corner. If you want to apply for a permit, you can click here in the top, or the big button with the magic wand right here in the middle of the page. I do want to mention we are going to come back to the creating contacts, but essentially what this allows you to do is identify a new utility or a new consultant so that you can identify them on the application. And for those companies, owners, and contacts, you can identify who should have access to submit applications on behalf of that company using these two options here. Finally, in the top right corner, you have your profile. You can use this to manage your account, change your password, or manage some of your other settings as well. Let's talk about applying for a permit. I'm going to click this Apply for a Permit icon right here in the middle of the page. First thing I need to do is identify what category of permit we're talking about here. Is it utility permit design, or is it subsurface utility engineering? Now, the SU is going to be major functionality for a later release, so I'm not really going to focus on that today. We'll focus on utility permit design. And I need to select what type of utility am I working with. Is this communications, electricity, gas, or water? Well, let's choose communication here. I will note that some of the attributes that we'll enter later are going to be specific based on the category that I've chosen here. So if you're working with a water utility, the attributes we set up later may be a little different from what you see in my demonstration of a communication utility. The first page is just going to be setting up who is the owner, and if you're working with a consultant, who are they? So I can choose the name of my utility owner. We've got a few just test IDs set up here. I'm going to choose just a very basic one that we've set up. If there is more than one owner, I can indicate that here. And I can indicate whether we are submitting this without a consultant. If the utility owner submits this, then it is already considered acknowledged. If a consultant submits it, it has to go first to the utility owner for them to acknowledge the permit application. So if I uncheck this box, it has me identify the consultant. So I could enter my own name here. If I don't find the name of the utility or the consultant that I'm looking for, I have a button right here that says Create Contact, and this is just exactly what you'll see if you click the company/owner/contacts here at the top. Let's go ahead and click this to open that window. I'll indicate whether it's an individual or a company. Let's click Company. Put in the company name and legal structure. Enter contact information like first and last name, telephone, and email. Notice some of the items that are underlined in red. Those are required fields. You have to enter those, and if you don't, you'll get an error message. The company's address, and then the billing address. Currently, this is checked by default to be same as address, so whatever I entered here. But if that's not the case, I can uncheck that box and then enter an alternate address as the billing address. I can add other folks here once I've saved that who should have access to this. We're going to go ahead and click Cancel, Close without saving. Next, we're going to choose the project title. Now, this is going to default to just the utility category and the date and time that I entered it, but I can enter whatever I need to here to indicate what kind of work I'm doing, what is the utility, what's the location. I can enter whatever I need to here in the project title. I can also identify a utility ID from TxDOT Connect. For those of you who are familiar with TxDOT Connect, anytime we have a construction project, a transportation project that requires a utility adjustment, we generate a utility ID for that work. You can reference that right here, and that will provide us with the means to carry information back and forth between RULIS and TxDOT Connect. It'll also determine how we manage some of the exception review processes later on. I'm going to leave this blank for now. It's not required. It might not apply. Well, let's go ahead and apply for a permit by clicking the button down here at the bottom. It is creating my project. It is saving it. It's assigning it a name. And as that page loads, we are now on the main application details page in RULIS for a new utility permit application. Let's talk about what we see here. In the top left corner, I've got just a little bitty panel here that's got one button in it. And what we're going to see as we move through the process, this big green click here to fill in the data button, we're going to see that pretty often. And depending on your role and depending on how you're involved in this process, you may see different buttons here, depending on where we are in the process. Generally speaking, whatever action is currently being required, you're going to find it highlighted up here as a button. Now, just below this, we'll see the name of the project and some of the other details about it, including the status and a quick summary where I can view a summary of the application status, where it is in the process, what's already been done, and what needs to be done next. Just below this, this is the application outline tree. You'll hear us refer to this as a tree often. It's how you'll navigate to the different parts of the application. And each of these icons with text next to it, we call these nodes. So this is a node of the tree, and this is the different parts of the application that you can navigate to, whether you want to check something out, update information, or if there is action currently required. When action is required, you're going to see that node in red. So anytime you see a red node in your application tree, that's the stuff that requires your attention. Usually, the button here at the top is going to give you a shortcut to access that node, whatever the required information is, and make sure that you fill that out. Here to the right, we have a map of Texas and the surrounding areas. As we go into drawing our project boundary, we'll zoom in on a certain portion, we'll draw our boundary, we'll draw our design, and as we continue through those steps, this map will update to be focused on the area where we are doing the work, but it will always give me a view of the map, the location where we're doing the work. Let's go ahead and use our green button here at the top that says click here to fill in the data, and that's going to take me to the next step in the process. So as I'm completing my application, one of the first steps is defining the project boundary. This is where all of your proposed work will be used, which should be entered, and this can be used to query any of the existing utility data that we have if someone's doing a search or trying to run a report. The way this works is you're given a map. You can zoom in, you can find certain locations by a street address, etc. But ultimately what you'll want to do is use the tools in the top right corner to draw a shape on the map. So what I'm going to do right now is click into a certain location that I have in mind. At the intersection of Highway 195 and Interstate 35. And I'm going to use these tools up here. I can draw a polygon. And when I say polygon, what we mean here primarily is a closed shape. It has to begin and end at the same spot. It's got to close all the way up. That's what our geospatial models are going to be looking for, is a closed polygon. Once I've drawn that, I can move it around, just click it and move it around, or I can go ahead and delete it if I need to. Let's go ahead and just draw a box around this intersection. Notice I have a blue dot following my cursor now. I'm going to click here, click here, click here, click here, and it snaps back to the starting point. To indicate that I'm done, I'm going to double click. Let's try that again. There we go. And now that I've gotten to the end of that, I've drawn my box. That defines the boundary location, and I'm going to click Next. It's doing a lot of things in the background here. It's establishing my geospatial coordinates. It's identifying what highways I'm working with, what county I'm in, what district we're in, any of the utilities that already exist in that area, any projects that are already underway. So it's identifying all of that stuff here. It's going to ask for just a few more pieces of information from me. A work description, which is required, and if applicable, some notes and a reference code. Now, remember, you're working with a lot of different stakeholders here. This work description is not just for you, it's for your other partners in the process, folks at TxDOT who need to review this, the utility owner or other consultants, maybe folks who are working on other utilities, but they're related to this due to them all being related to the same transportation project. So those are some things that you need to keep in mind as you are writing out your work description. And I'm going to scroll down. I can click Continue to indicate that I am all done with establishing my work boundary and entering my work description. The next part of the process is going to be a more detailed drawing of my utility design. All right, here we are. We have our message confirming that we've completed that boundary, and it's got some instructions here letting me know now I need to draw my utility alignment or other geometry to represent the utility work. I'm going to use some tools in the upper right of the map, or you can import data by right-clicking on the red layers node on the tree. I'll show you where that is here in just a bit. For now, we're already on the page where we need to be for me to manually draw this in RULIS. Now, if you do have some geospatial data that you can plug in, survey data, there is a way to upload that, and I'll show you how here in just a bit. What I'm going to do right now, though, is draw within my work boundary where I think this utility takes place, where I think that work is going to be done. I've got a point, I've got a line, I can delete, or here's a button that says Add Survey Data. So we can do that. Remember, at any time you can use some of the other resources that are built into the tool, such as this Tools tour here, or the Help feature down here at the bottom that will walk you through some of these processes. I'm going to draw a communications line, maybe fiber optics, maybe telephone poles, etc. running right here along the interstate. Double click to let it know that I'm done. And the panel on the left is updating to require my utility attributes. Anything in red is required. So I'm going to click select here. Let's say that this is fiber optics. And let's say it's a segment. Indicate my component. Let's, yeah, cable or wire, that's fine. And then some additional information about that cable or wire. Distribution service, transmission, is it got a conveyance method? Is there certain materials that we're talking about here? And then indicate more about that. Diameter, say just 1 inch, that's fine. Above ground, whether it's in service or not. And then if there's any data sensitivity. So I've established all of that. I do have the option to add more lines here. Once I have clicked next, I could add another shape to the map, but we're just going to go ahead and click next and let that populate with my geospatial data based on the shapes I've drawn on the map. Okay, so as I've completed the attributes over here, my line now appears as a gold color, and I have this button here that says End Design Phase, End Design Draw Phase. So I can go ahead and say that this is complete. If I needed to, I could draw more shapes on the map. There might be more than one segment of cable. But I'm going to go ahead and click End Design Draw Phase, and it will update my application map. It's giving me an application status summary here, letting me know I'm entering design, no problem. Next steps, go ahead and click Continue. Okay, we are back on the main application details page. We've still got our click here to fill in the data button. We've still got our application status, but my status has updated a little bit. It now says completing the form. Got a document preview I can look at, or I can look at more details that summarize the status. And now I've seen where it is zoomed in on my section of the map where I've drawn my project boundary, as well as the utility design itself. Not only that, as I look here to the left, I have several red nodes in my application, in my tree. And each of these are going to require information for me to fill out. It's already populated the different sections of the roads based on what I've chosen. So I've got sections of I-35 and of State Highway 195. What I need to do is either double click one of these nodes to go there and fill out the information, or if I just want to let the wizard walk me through it, I'm going to click here to fill in the data, and it will have me go section by section. Let's do that. There's several sections of the questionnaire that I need to complete. And the first one is just general information. What type of installation is being proposed? Is this going to be permanent, temporary, etc.? Now, some of these questions will generate different information that I need to enter based on my answers. So what type of installation is proposed? I indicate whether it's permanent or temporary. Is it required because of a TxDOT highway project? If no, there's no change to the situation. But if I click yes, a few additional fields appear for me to indicate a TxDOT project ID. Now, there might be more than one. This utility work might impact multiple TxDOT projects. So I can enter the utility ID here, and I can have multiple. If I have multiple and I decide to change my mind, I can click the little trash can to delete those. You'll notice there is another question here. Is it associated with a TxDOT reimbursable utility adjustment? And if I say yes to that, it will ask me for a utility ID. Let's go ahead and leave these as no, just to keep things simple. Does the utility facility directly or indirectly serve the public? And is it authorized by state law to operate, construct, and maintain its facilities over, under, across, on, or along highways? Let's go ahead and say yes here. If I said no, there are a few other pieces of information that it will require from me. Will it be located on or in another utility facility, for example, with a joint occupancy agreement? If I say yes, I need to indicate who that is through a description, and I can also upload the file that has the joint occupancy agreement. We'll say no for now. Is it service, distribution, transmission, or gathering? I'll go ahead and say transmission here. And which of the following conditions apply? It has already told me above ground. This is a communications fiber optics cable, but I could make other selections here. If I say that it's crossing the highway, I will be asked some additional information. If I say that it is along or parallel the highway or underground, those don't have anything else that pops up for me. Let's click Next to move forward. It saves that page of the application and moves on to the next. First of all, we want to show that we are TAC compliant. If you need a quick reminder of what is included in the Texas Administration Code, you can click the link right here, and that's going to give you more information about that. We're going to go ahead and say yes, it does comply with all these requirements. It will also ask me to upload the plans. So I click this button right here that says Choose Files, opens up my File Explorer. I can find whatever plans it is that are appropriate for this, and it attaches that as part of my submission. Traffic control section. Construction activities off the roadway. Will any lane closures or traffic modification be required? If I say yes, it will require traffic control plans. If I say no, nothing. Will there be any bore pits, excavation, or equipment that will require protection during construction? Yes or no. Let's go ahead and go on to the next page by clicking the Next button. RULIS is keeping track of where I am in the application with these little chevrons up here at the top. So you can always see where you are in the overall process. General applicant questionnaire, plans and traffic control, abandonment. I still got requested exceptions, contacts, timeframes before I go on through some of the other details here. A lot of that's already populated for me based on the location that I entered. Is there abandonment? It defaults to no. If I say yes, then I'm going to need to enter some additional details about the abandonment. Is there proposed payment, drainage, and right-of-way lines shown? Yes or no? Do the utility lines differentiate between existing to remain in place, to be abandoned, or removed and proposed to be installed? Yes or no? Are all proposed abandonments in place accompanied by an abandonment request letter? Yes or no? And I need to upload that abandonment request letter here. Once again, I have the link to the Texas Administrative Code that is relevant to abandonment, and I can open that and review that if I need to. We're going to click No just to keep things simple here, and then click Next. Requested exceptions. So here we are indicating whether there are any exceptions. Now, if there are, this is going to have to go through a much longer review process, whether these are exceptions to Texas Administrative Code or exceptions to TxDOT's policy in the Row Utility Manual. If you say none for both of these, then everything should be pretty simple and straightforward. If you say yes, once more, there is a link to the Texas Administrative Code. But if I say yes here, I will be required to provide more detail. I need to indicate what section of the Texas Administrative Code are we talking about, what subsection, and what is my description and justification for why I feel that this is still necessary despite the fact that it does not comply with the Texas Administrative Code. We're going to click None for now just to keep this simple. Note that for the Row Utility Manual exceptions, there is a similar exercise of identifying which manual, what chapter, what section, and what is my description and justification for those exceptions. And let's click Next. Our next section is for contacts. Now you have to have an emergency contact. We do require that. So I will enter a name and surname, a telephone number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and an email address, email@email.com. Those are required at least. And depending on your utility permit, what type of utility you're working with, and what it is that you're requesting, there may be some other contacts that you want to make sure that you include here. You can have one or more contractors and additional contacts as well. Let's click Next to move on. All right, we're getting pretty close to the end of the application that we got to fill out. The time frames. What is my proposed schedule? I can select dates on a calendar, say from September 1st through September 30th. I can indicate how many working days that is. Sure, we're starting this date and finishing by this date, but how many working days are we really talking about here? And the actual schedule section is next. This will not be updated until after you have submitted the permit application and after it's been approved. That will be one of the tasks that you'll want to complete for an approved application. And this is where you'll enter that. You have a space for notes, and you can go to the next section. One last page for notes, a reference code, and, if applicable, attachments. If there are additional documents that you think are relevant for the reviewer, or pictures that will help to clarify exactly where this utility facility is. You can also preview the document and download that preview clicking here, because what this is going to do is generate a PDF document so that TxDOT can keep that on record. Because I indicated at the beginning that I am a utility consultant, completing this on behalf of a utility permit owner, I can send it to that utility owner for acknowledgement. I cannot send it directly to TxDOT. So I can click that button here. If you leave this page, if you just save this and come back to the detail view, you still have the option of doing that. You don't have to go back through the process. It has captured all the information. And notice here at the top, instead of just click here to fill in the data, I also have this button that says Send to Utility Owner for Acknowledgement. That same button that I saw on the final page of the application is available for me here. So this becomes your one-stop shop for all those actions that need to be taken. Also, as I scroll down the page, I can see all of the different parts of the application, and they are no longer red. They are purple, indicate that I have completed those sections. I can return back to them just by double-clicking one of those nodes to make any changes that I need to. Okay, let's go ahead and send this on to my utility owner for acknowledgement and see what happens. I get a confirmation message. Asks me once more for notes, reference codes. This is basically that last page of the application that we saw before, and I can preview or download that preview once more. But let's go ahead and confirm with our Send to Utility Owner for Acknowledgement button at the bottom of the page. That is generating the document for me, and it's going to send that to my utility owner. And it's downloaded that into my browser, so I can open this right up and take a look at it myself. Click OK here. Now, as you complete certain actions in RULIS, there are notifications that go out to the next person who needs to complete an action. So in this instance, since I've changed that to where the utility owner needs to acknowledge the application, that's going to be generating a notification based on the information that's been entered into our contacts and organizational units up here. Down in my application tree, the node that says acknowledgement is red, so that is currently requiring it. However, I'm signed in as a utility consultant, so I won't be able to do this. If I were a utility permit owner and I brought this up in RULIS, I would see that acknowledgement button right here at the top, and I would have this node here to complete. Let's sign out and sign back in as that utility permit owner so that we can complete that acknowledgement. Here I am as a permit owner. Notice my ID has changed. And bear in mind, yours will actually say your name. This is just the name of our test ID in our test environment. Well, let me scroll down here and find those applications that require some action on my part. Click here, Actions Required. And take a look at this very first one, ending in 11759. That's the application we've been working on. And you notice here it tells me that requires my acknowledgement. That is the status. So I'm going to click on Action, and I'm going to say Process Application. As a permit owner, I have access to all the same information that the utility consultant had. The difference is I can complete that utility owner acknowledgement. So either from up here in my box to complete those steps with whatever comes next in the process, or by double-clicking the acknowledgement down here at the bottom. So come up here to the top, click here to fill in the data. It's going to take me right to that acknowledgement page and let me complete that and submit it to TxDOT. Now, I am not going to read through all of this in the training, but I absolutely do encourage you to do so that you make sure you understand what you're agreeing to. I'm going to go ahead and check the box here in my training environment. Here's my default name. So this basically amounts to a digital signature. And I click Next. And now that I've completed that acknowledgement step, I am ready to go ahead and submit this to TxDOT. So this is my application status summary. It tells me I am complete with that, and this button is now available to me. So I can either click that right here in the application status summary, or if I'm at the detail view, now that I have completed that acknowledgement, this button is available. It's enabled. So I can click Submit to TxDOT right here as well. Do you really want to send this application to initial review status? And the answer is yes, yes I do. It has been sent to the next status, and this is now in the status of initial review. As a permit owner, I cannot come in here and complete the initial review. That needs to be completed by TxDOT. So at this point, the ball is in TxDOT's court. They're going to come down here to the DPC, that's the District Permit Coordinator. They're going to complete their required reviews. They're going to indicate TAC compliance. They can distribute that almost like a dispatcher to various subject matter expert reviewers or exceptions to policy reviewers, and the final approval of the permit application. So for most of you who complete these utility permit applications, that's where the final step of the process completes. What will happen next is TxDOT will complete their review. They may ask for additional information, but ultimately, if everything has been done correctly, they'll approve that permit for the work to move forward. So what I want to do now is return back to my home page, but as a utility consultant. And let's talk about some of the other things that can happen after the review has been completed by TxDOT. They might request additional information, or it may be ready for me to begin construction, to begin the actual work that we were requesting a permit for. In any case, those can be found here under Actions Required or Submitted Applications. I can find those here. I'm going to go to Actions Required, and we're going to find all of the applications that I have access to as my utility consultant profile and the organizations that it's associated with. And what I can do is I can search this up here at the top, or I can use the sort and filter features here at the top. Let's take a look at one that's requiring additional information. Now, this is a different application, but I do want to show you the steps that are involved. Let's go to Process Application in my action view over here. If I needed to, I could reassign this to a different utility consultant that's working on the same utility permit application, or I could just view a summary of the application. But since I actually need to perform an action, I'm going to select Process Application in my Action drop-down menu. When TxDOT requires additional information, you'll see some messages like this up here at the top. The status is additional information required, and I have my green button that tells me the additional information is required. It's going to take me right there, and I got a red item here that says you've got some requests that need to be filled. I also have the availability to navigate to whatever is red down here at the bottom. In this case, they're telling me I've got to have a traffic plan. So I could double click that red node, or I can click see the additional information required here. I've attached some things. I can enter a response. Please see plans attached. Maybe there's additional explanation that might be required. There might be details that TxDOT has requested specifically. There may be questions that they're asking me, and I need to answer that here if I want this permit application to move forward in the process. I can also add other attachments. So I'm going to go back and add my sample plans from earlier as well. And that will allow me to navigate around my own system and find the file that I want to attach. Now this can be pretty sophisticated here in some of the selections that you want to do. It might be a traffic control plan. You can actually indicate that that is what you are attaching, and you can provide additional description here in the text box. Let's choose a file, and let's add our sample plans and save. Here's that sample plans PDF. I could delete that if I need to, or I can view that. Click Next. So at this point, I've added the information. I've completed the request. I could either withdraw that or say, you know what, we're not going to do this anymore. It gets archived after 10 days. So you do need to answer within 10 days. Or I can go ahead and submit this modified application back to TxDOT with the information that they requested. Now, this button is available here in the status summary page. It's also available back on the application details. Now that I have responded to the information that they were requesting, I can click the Submit Modified Application button. Remember, you want to make sure that you respond to those requests within 10 days. I could generate and download that summary again. Let's go ahead and click Send. So now this is back in initial review status. Let's talk about some of the other actions that I can take whenever I have a permit that's actually been reviewed and approved. If it's been reviewed and approved, I'll get a notification letting me know to come in here and check it out. Some other things that might be required, though, once I have that completed permit, I will need to confirm the construction start date and end date. Let's go and take a look at some applications that have already been completed. And let's look for one that's requiring that construction start date. Here we go. Here's one that's waiting for a construction start date. I go over here to Action. I can view the permit. I can view the application. I can duplicate. I can add reviewers. Let's go ahead and view the permit. What I'm going to do is click this Edit Application button here and let it bring me to exactly where I need to go. Notice here I have a few choices. I can propose new schedule. I can confirm start of construction, but I could also ask for an amendment. So there's a few different things I can do once my utility permit has been approved. Let's scroll down here to the time frame and just double click on what we want to change. Our start of work date was already entered previously as July 7th of 2022. We're going to go ahead and use this opportunity, though, to change time, travel through time, and change our start date to July of 2023. My confirm start of construction button is now enabled. I don't have that little cross out thing anymore. So for some of those, you will need to go to the node and add that information right there in the outline. We detail all of these different activities in our Create and Submit a Utility Permit Application job aid. So make sure you check that out if you want detailed instructions on all of those additional application actions that you can take. That will just about wrap us up for creating and submitting a utility permit application. Let's take a look real quick at our objectives. I think we've looked at all of these. So we created a new utility permit outline application. We navigated using the tree. We did define our project boundary and our design location. We completed our final application forms, contacts, and timeframes, and we submitted that application. We saw how to check the status, and we responded to requests for additional information, and then managing some of those tasks for approved permits. Check out our other resources on TxDOT.gov on our RULIS webpage, but we'll go ahead and stop there for creating and submitting a utility permit application. My name is Will Boyd. Looking forward to all of you using RULIS. Thank you and have a wonderful day.